It is election day in a number of key contests around the country. Today will tie the longest government shutdown in American history, and Eric Swalwell is in a little bit of hot water, but it's not from the Chinese spies this time. All of that and so much more today on 10 Minute Drill.
Everybody get up, get up.
The story of America is the story of an adventure.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
We are a nation under God, and I believe God intended for us to be free.
While most Americans are anxiously awaiting midterms next year in 2026, a number of states and cities have other big elections that are happening literally today. We're going to go through a few of those in the key races to watch. But first, we start in New York. On Sunday night, President Trump spoke to 60 Minutes and talked about the New York mayoral race.
You have a communist running New York. All you're doing is wasting the money you're sending there. So I don't know that he's won, and I'm not a fan of Cuomo one way or the other, but if it's going to be between a bad Democrat and a communist, I'm going to pick the bad Democrat all the time.
That New York mayoral race will probably end up getting the most attention out of everything on Tuesday because it does highlight one of Democrats' major problems, a narrowing electorate where they're heavily focused on the votes of rich, white, liberal women that are more and more focused on extreme candidates like actual communist Zohran Mamdani. Just across the river in New Jersey, the governor's race is going to be one of the hottest tickets to watch this evening as votes come in. Just a month or two ago, this looked like a 5 to 7 point race. Now it is closed, with polls showing it between 1 and 4 points apart, which is within striking distance for Jack Ciattarelli, who was on the ticket just 4 years ago when pollsters and pundits had dismissed the race completely, only to see it surprise on election night as a shockingly close race. Now we move down to Virginia, where two races are really animating voters. First, the governor's race, which just a couple months ago looked to be 12 to 15 points apart. It's close to being about 8 to 10 points apart in polls. It still is a tough haul for Republicans, but if Glenn Youngkin's success just 4 years ago is any indication, there is a real opportunity there. But the other very, very close race to watch in Virginia is the Attorney General race. According to Real Clear Politics, Miyares has led in 11 of the last 12 polls since Jay Jones' texts were revealed, by as many as 8 in some. Now, those texts, you'll remember, we've talked about them in probably every episode of 10 Minute Drill since they came out in early October, in which the candidate for top law enforcement official in the Commonwealth of Virginia talked about wanting to murder his political opponents and watch their children die. Naturally, that has had an impact both on the AG race and the governor's race. But as I said before, polling has consistently shown the Republican candidate, Jason Miyares, pulling ahead there because of this. We will watch how this wraps up. But one dynamic that's been interesting to watch in both New Jersey and Virginia, President Barack Obama was brought in as the closer for both of those races. To me, that's interesting for a number of reasons. But for one, it highlights the fact that Democrats don't really have a new, fresh champion. If they're digging up the person who was president 10 years ago, it shows there's not a lot of new energy who can come in and make that closing pitch to voters. The last race that I want to highlight today is California's Prop 50, which we've talked about quite a bit before. This is the Gavin Newsom gerrymandering nuclear option, where California is going to take their electoral maps that are already incredibly gerrymandered and make them even worse. That comes to the ballot today, and there's been early voting for a few weeks. Every celebrity in America has come out to push for this. It is a terrible, terrible proposition. California has a very popular independent redistricting commission, which draws maps there to make them as fair as possible. As I said, they're already not very fair, but this will make them significantly worse. My one question to the people of California is this. As you look at your state, the fact that companies are leaving in droves, people are leaving in droves, you're looking at $8.50 for gas next year. Everything in your life is getting more difficult. Do you really want to give more power to Gavin Newsom, the person behind that? Because that is what voting for Prop 50 will do. Today is day 35 of the government shutdown, which ties now the length for longest shutdown in American history. Democrats continue to struggle to defend this. We're going to show some of them right now. First, here's Hakeem Jeffries.
Are Democrats prepared to keep the government closed through Thanksgiving if it comes to that?
The question is, why are Republicans continuing to keep the government shut down?
That point there is notable because one of the biggest things people are going to feel from this shutdown is travel challenges. And as somebody who can't get on a plane anywhere without getting some kind of delay or insane problem, that frustrates me quite a bit. But coming up to the Thanksgiving high traffic holidays, people are really going to have challenges with that. Here is Senator Tim Kaine.
Democrats chose not to support that short-term CR, which would have kept the government open. You could have negotiated. Now there's some pretty devastating impacts on people looking for SNAP, on air traffic controllers, on air travel. So what have the Democrats gained from this?
Well, I don't look at this as politics.
My favorite clip, perhaps, of the weekend was House Democrat Janelle Bynum, who clearly has learned the word poison pill, but doesn't know what it means and can't really use it very well in this discussion.
Any bill that they've put forth, they've always had some extra stuff to it. There's always been a poison pill to it.
What were the poison pills of the clean CR, or the continuing resolution, you say it's not clean, that was voted on in the House in mid-September?
Here's what's important. I think what you're trying to do is shift the responsibility to Democrats.
When you start to lose the media, you start to feel like the end of a shutdown might be coming. And the challenge here for Democrats is there is no good explanation for trying to say Republicans are at fault when media can repeat over and over again that Democrats have voted 13 times against a bill that would fund the government. But the latest flap has been SNAP benefits or food stamps for people who are in need. Over the weekend, 2 Democrat-appointed judges in New England ruled that the Trump administration is required to fund food stamp benefits. Now, this raises a lot of constitutional questions. For example, if a judge can rule that they need to fund food stamps, even though they're saying they don't have enough money to do it and the government is shut down, why can't judges then force Democrats to reopen the federal government, which is the quickest, simplest path to get those food stamps funded? The Trump administration has said they want to fund food stamps. They don't want anyone to go hungry because of the recklessness of Democrats. So they are saying we're going to work to find a way legally to move emergency funding over to pay for that, even though that emergency funding is about $5 billion. The program, which funds 42 million people on food stamps, would require closer to $9 billion. So this isn't going to last very long, but it will take some of the pressure off from Democrats. Now, President Trump has said he's willing to negotiate with Democrats on these key points that they're focused on, but not under the threat of a shutdown. Here he is on CBS.
But I'm not going to do it by extortion. I'm not going to do it by being extorted by the Democrats who have lost their way.
You'll note that President Trump's words there, we're willing to talk about fixing healthcare. We're willing to hold votes to have a debate on even these ridiculous pandemic premium subsidies. The reason that Democrats won't take yes for an answer on that is because they don't just want these subsidies to pass. They want them to pass without any kind of debate or process, because they know if there's hearings on these subsidies and if people learn more about what's being demanded of their tax dollars, they won't like it. And so it's not just that they want the policy to pass. They want it to pass without any kind of debate about it, because it's bad policy. And that, my friends, is a bad hostage-taking strategy. On Sunday night, President Trump appeared on 60 Minutes for a wide-ranging, very long interview. One topic they touched on was immigration.
We have to start off with a policy, and the policy has to be you came into the country illegally, you're going to go out.
Now, on that same day, CBS's own polling showed that President Trump has a 13-point advantage on who voters trust to handle immigration. 39% think that Republicans and President Trump have a better approach, whereas only 26% say Democrats. And despite a lot of approval polls coming out showing that, President Trump's numbers have softened, that same CBS poll also showed that President Trump and Republicans have a 7-point advantage in trust in the economy. 35% believe that Republicans have a better approach to economic policy for the U.S. right now. Only 28% say that about Democrats. Another topic that President Trump touched on in that 60 Minutes interview with Norah O'Donnell was safety in cities, particularly Washington, D.C.
You can have your daughter, who's 10 years old, meet you at the park. She's going to be okay.
In certain parts of D.C.
Well,
I live in D.C.
Well,
certain parts
you
of
tell
DC.
me, how big a difference is D.C. now compared to what it was a year ago?
In
Do you
cities,
see a difference?
In Washington, D.C.?
Yes.
I think I've been working too hard. I haven't been out and about that much.
Oh, that's not a fair answer. You see a difference.
Cop out. Norah wants to use the fact that she lives in D.C. to push back on President Trump's assertion that D.C. is much safer. But when he says, but don't you feel a little bit safer? She's like, I actually haven't been outside. So she's just trying to be a little bit antagonistic there to create sort of a TV moment. And I'm glad that President Trump pushed her on that. I live in D.C. and sometimes I'll go out at night and I'll see National Guard around, and I think this is great. I feel a little bit safer. But Norah O'Donnell is known for treating different interviewees a little bit differently. We all remember how she treated Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson.
The title, lovely one, yes, that's what your name means.
It is.
As you hear that, remember that that person she's talking to, like a very special 4-year-old, is a Supreme Court justice. A news story last week, Americans for Public Trust highlighted a Fox News report about Eric Swalwell. Unearthed records exposed Swalwell campaign's bizarre inconsistency in payments to California man. FEC filings from Swalwell for Congress show over 75 payments to an individual named Darley Meyer, with various reasons given for the disbursements. Individual payments vary from as little as $53 to over $12,000. Based on the payments, Meyer has earned varying amounts each year, including over 27 payments last year that added up to over $120,000. He is on pace to make over $120,000 in 2025. Now, Swalwell was asked what this is for, and he didn't really want to say. He sort of hinted at the person was a security personnel figure in his life, but the person is not registered or licensed as a security personnel. So, lots of questions for the guy who previously was entangled with a Chinese spy. But this follows a long pattern of quirky campaign spending from Swalwell, including things like luxury yacht services, a resort in Dubai, and 5-star hotels in Paris. Now, I have no idea what Eric Swalwell might be using campaign cash for hotels in Paris, Dubai, and luxury yacht services, but I support whatever he needs to free up more time for him to be able to make videos like this.
Hey, Congressman.
What's going on?
Hey, Congressman.
What's up?
Hey, Congressman.
Hey, what's happening? You're everywhere, man.
Fox News reports that a Maryland Supreme Court justice who is overseeing a major climate case where the city of Baltimore is suing a number of energy companies for what they say is their role in climate change was found to have a very politically charged Halloween display. Judge Derek Killow had gravestones marking the death of climate science, the Constitution, rest in peace to the Hatch Act, and here lies respect, beware cuts to health insurance, and rest in peace, freedom of speech. Now remember there, Justice Killow is sitting on a panel where he is supposed to give impartial consideration of a case about climate science, or as I would say, the lack of climate science, as many of these cases are, in which they want people to believe you put gas in your car, yada, 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 somehow it rains in Baltimore. In America, you are constitutionally promised the right to a fair trial, to an impartial judge, impartial jury, all of those things. Imagine if you're the defendant in this case and they're deciding whether or not you caused climate change and you found one of the judges put this up in their yard for Halloween. Not only are they kind of a weirdo, but it will make you wonder if you're actually getting a fair trial. For our You Can't Make It Up segment today, we go back to the failure to soft launch of Gavin Newsom and one of my favorite interview moments that he has had thus far.
What do you make of all the Patrick Bateman talk?
I don't know, but
I mean, people say that you are like American
serious?
Psycho. Yeah.
Jesus, yeah. Like I said, new scum. I mean, look.
But even your friends like say this.
Oh, do they?
I mean, yeah.
I'm going to reevaluate my guest list.
I mean.
Even your friends say that. That's pretty brutal. I mean, to think, Gavin Newsom probably brought some of these people to French Laundry in the middle of the pandemic. And how do they reward him? By talking about how he is like American Psycho, the murderer who kills their friends while listening to, Phil Collins and things like that. American Psycho is a crazy movie. And, Gavin Newsom does share a lot in common with American Psycho. The fact that his identity isn't totally consistent or clear, and nobody knows just how far he's willing to go to get power. But to be told your friends compare you to American Psycho Patrick Bateman is pretty brutal, but that's some good TV. That is all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us here on 10 Minute Drill. Please like, subscribe, leave us a review if you like what you hear. Have a great day.